There we go. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to another stream here at Strange Loop Games. My name is Jens, as you see from the neat little description below here. I'm working as lead game developer at our cozy little global covering studio, and we'll be going over some more playtest stuff. Some bug squashing, some of the nasty things that have kind of popped up in terms of design related to the settlement features that have been seen on the recent Sea Otter. Now that we are starting to get a lot of these features kind of wrapped up and completed, we are also seeing a lot of good resulting unintended behavior and player activities. And you know, anyone here that is playing on Sea Otter, we have that annexation carnage where eco unintendedly turned into like super not combat oriented but conflict oriented and driven, kind of rushed through things. So I think we can talk about a little bit around that and kind of what we want to be changing with it based on the feedback and the responses, and kind of how it's been used to make it more in towards the direction we want it to work in eco, as well as kind of, you know, usability of it, and a bit about kind of restrictions we're considering and looking at, as well as just kind of the usability of it, and so on. So I think we can just kind of take it away with some recent work from there we go, switched over, and I'm hoping everyone can hear me all right. Some recent fixes and bug squashing from Gabriel, which is one of our guys that is working mainly on kind of gameplay, direct gameplay things like you know, boat polish, the physics surrounding the boats, and the usability, you know, changing out hitboxes, implementing them, kind of grabbing them from art assets into and kind of operational in game, and so on, back and forth, and a lot of it. And he's been doing absolutely fantastic with some of the recent things that we have put on his table. Time noon, that's what I was thinking. So what have he been up to recently? Well, he kind of fixed rivers. Anyone that has been poking their heads into 10 has seen that river generation and lake generation has been wonky, I should say, probably a good description of it. You've seen that, you know, kind of flying fish and a bit of inappropriate behavior in that regard, and the reason for that is that this top block of water that was generated on in the lakes and in the rivers had water in them, but they were not properly generated because they were replaced with air blocks, and below the water surface you had something that's referred to as encased water blocks, which is a way to kind of compress the entirety of that water body data wise to optimize kind of ocean, because interactive players are only kind of doing things towards one specific tile. They don't need to have the entirety of the chunk of data being sent to them. And why is that thing not there? Why is that thing not there? Oh, it's there. It's just way too high up. Hang on. There's supposed to be a work in progress thing there. There we go. Boats are done yet. Boats are actually being, and that's something that I'll also kind of cover a little bit on our recent things, because that's been kind of water and boats have been one of Gabriel's kind of main priorities in the last couple of weeks. So data-wise, water is basically divided into two sections. You have surface blocks and you have subsurface blocks, and the subsurface blocks kind of gets compressed they don't need to contain as much data being sent to the client, because the client doesn't need to get that. The animals or terrain and kind of environment doesn't need to know about blocks under the surface, because they're kind of not really interacting with the environment in the same way. So that entire segment of code was causing a bit of a headache, and now it should be working. And there is it's not yet deployed on the branch, so you're not going to see it in the playtest in the nearest couple of days. But it is being posted as a PR to the playtest. How will that affect both fishing? It's not going to have all. We have a couple of kind of things that we're looking at in terms of animals in general that I might have to probably deserving a dedicated stream for later, that we can talk about general animal behavior. But yeah, so let me. Do we have a river here somewhere? Sorry for the skip, bounce, hop, and. Where am I? There I am. Just speeding over here. So here we have a river. The waterfalls are still something that we need to look at to kind of make them angle out a little bit better, make them a little bit more polished looking. There's also a couple of issues where like the water faces aren't completely coherent to where the water actually is. So there's still a couple of things where these generation things are looking a bit sad, but it is progressively getting better as we're tinkering with it. But on a wholesome level, the rivers should be looking quite fine now, going forward. And yeah, so huge shout out for Gabriel to tackle that. It's been plaguing us for a bit, so that's gonna be less flying fish in the rivers from a player perspective, which I'm hoping is gonna be a smoother experience. To the second thing, since we are discussing water and tinkering with water, we have the wooden barge, which once again, anyone that has been poking around with the playtest will have had the exceptional experience of driving this thing around, and it has been a bit of a sad experience. So there's a few things that are happening here, and I'm not sure all of them are in here. Yeah, so one of the things that we were doing is we're increasing the height of the barge, so it's going to be sitting a lot higher out of the water, which will generally require some type of infrastructure. The ramp isn't going to go all the way down. It's going to go flat forward like the industrial barge is going. So that'll go here, which means you'll need some type of infrastructure to kind of get off the beach or get on land. So any type of building material block or whatnot to just kind of get up to that height. Yeah, let's do... Always getting that one wrong. Let's grab a cart and let's grab a steam truck. So here we got ourselves a little cart, and get this bad boy up on here. And then we're gonna run down and get our little steam truck here. And get this bad boy up here as well. And then we are going to close this up. And as you can see, kind of because it's slightly higher out of the water, it's a little bit less stable. So general kind of behavior in turning and swirling around, and kind of the physics implications of the some of the vessels is something that we're looking at for kind of effect and transition. However, as you can see here, these two vehicles that are sitting on top of the barge is now stationary. They're not drifting, they're not swirling around, they're not stuttering or janking around in any way. They are actually firm set on the vehicle itself. And that has been something that has taken way too long to yeah, all thanks to the flex tape. No, it's been something that's been plaguing us for a long time, and we've been segment throughout 10.0 development. It's been bouncing back and forth between different people to kind of try different approaches to how we want to handle this in terms of the land-based vehicles are working on a different physical layer than the boats. The boats are kind of coming up with a good measure of merging the two or being able to interact with the two without one kind of overtaking the other, causing conflicts and issues. And Gabriel finally figured out a solution that it's no longer it's both no longer sinking into the barge, which was another issue. So the land-based vehicles were kind of half sliding down through it, but it was also kind of stuttering around and flying a bit all over the place. So that should all be working quite nicely now. So that is a couple of critical bugs in terms of being able to deliver the boats in a lot more polished state. And I'll also be going over some of the kind of calorie cost consumption for using the vehicles to make sure that they're not overly excessive costs in terms of calories versus kind of transportation measures in between the wooden barge contra the wooden transport and so on. I think there was something else as well, but outside of that, we've had a whole myriad of crash fixes done, some changes, some internal changes based on feedback, and just general bug squishing aplenty. It's been absolutely fantastic. Things are progressing really quickly and they're really efficient. Is the amount of slots in boats going to increase compared to cars, or how is the balance of boats versus cars going on in general? Canoes are probably not going to be that much increased. They're probably going to be sitting around the same. I did I did bunch up and yeah, you can get into the vehicle, but it is locked while the ramps are pulled up. So the ramps are what's gonna be determining whether or not this thing is physically locked or not. So you know, you need to pull up the ramps to be able to go anywhere. As soon as you kind of lower the ramps, you can interact with it. It's not really liking it way too much, so you know, things that are in progress. I think it's because I'm way too not collided with land. I know there was some premonitions there. Was wondering because I can see scenarios where you'd let someone get on the boat in their truck and stay in it. Yeah, that's absolutely possible. So that is definitely doable. Like, you can jump in on the barge and you know, you have another guy driving it, and you can just kind of shuffle in trucks on it. And as soon as those gates are up, it's locked it off completely. And the second thing that has happened is that we've also extended the height of the ramps as well, so they're slightly longer, which means it can be a bit further out into the ocean, rather than having to really get close and snugly. What happens if I don't own the truck and I try to pick up the barge? I would believe that the truck just falls into the ocean. at the moment. Nope. I think they might actually be teleporting, which might not be a good thing. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wonder. Well, 0-0 is on land, so that's not a thing. I think it just popped. Steam trick, which is what I expected out of it. No. Ooh, it's out there, spicy. Did it just fall down the cliff and I didn't see it, or where did it go? The investigative force. Yeah, there we go. I think what happened was it unloaded from the chunk. So when it loaded the chunk back in, it popped them back in. But yeah, so this is things that are in progress and hasn't really passed QA yet. So, you know, all alive, eventful things. But yes, a lot of bug squashing, and as you can see, you fixed, you know, 10 bugs, and you create 1 or 2 more. How to mess with your friends: send their vehicles flying by loading them onto a barge. No, but it's been going quite good, and as you can see here, it's also throwing me some errors as well with it's failing to set parents for the wood cart and the steam truck due to explosion here. But yeah, no. So, you know, a couple of critical bugs that's getting some good attention and some good progress on. Yeah, you can move vehicles with control. I would assume in its current iteration, I would assume that it's gonna do the same thing. Because what happens is that the vehicles that are on top of the barge are being parented by the barge, so the barge kind of owns those vehicles in terms of like game object hierarchy, which means anything that's kind of happening to the barge is going to affect its child components. So what's most likely needing to be done is just making sure that if there's vehicles on the barge, you can't pick it up. I'm going to boot up the playtest branch and hop in on Sea Otter. Although I'm on playtest, I'm not on Sea Otter playtest, which is bad. Yeah, that's likely going to be the case. So it's going to tell you that, hey, you know, you've got vehicles on the barge, you can't pick this up. The warfare world, yeah. Yeah, annexation and kind of the so if anyone has curiosities surrounding the playtest, could, you know, go over that as well. There is a current live playtest that's going on Sea Otter, and how you get into the playtest overall, and with any one, preferably stay connected to our Discord channel and keep around there to get more information on upcoming playtests, as well as current and changes and kind of patches and crashes and anything that can or will or can go wrong on it. How to get in on the actual server is you get in on Steam and you hop in on properties, you go into beta tab, and then here where you can switch and select a whole myriad of older branches, you've got this at the current one, Sea Otter Playtest. which is the one to be able to connect to Sea Otter, and then we have White Tiger Playtest for whenever playtest is on White Tiger. Need to make sure that that branch is selected. Once it's selected, you can pop in and that will allow you to connect. Is there any option that we can get a Steam-based mini skid loader in one of the updates? We have some plans for some mining improvements in 10.1. I'll restrain from saying anything more because kind of want to save it for another stream, but also it's still in kind of planning phase. So want to make sure that the information, as you can see here, my local server is in debug, so I can't connect to that. However, I can grab this amazing Sea Otter server. And I don't think I've been on this one yet. We'll see, we'll see. But yeah, so there's a ton of things that are preliminary plan for 10.1. One of them being a new building block. As well as some other goodies. So, you know, stay tuned and pay attention to when newsletters and the blogs and all the other kind of media information outlets. Yeah, Pepsi, a new building block, which is something that I wanted to bring up in the stream here a little bit later to kind of. Is fishing pole working on Sea Otter? I don't think Mike pushed a PR for it yet. He's working on fixing it. It's one of the sad tools that kind of, after all of Mike's fixes for like the drills and everything around it, the fishing rod needed some extra love to make it look nice and workable, which also meant that it didn't make it into this playtest. So at the moment, and as an answer to another question up there where in regards to crab pots, still in the game, they work a lot better. We have, they're probably working a little bit too good, at least the fish trap. But I have some more solid ways to balance that, and I can actually show some of that off here in a bit. So here we can see Elwin, the new spawning system where you can select different spawn points, and all of these that are linked into a town is things that have immigration settings where it's allowing you to kind of start in those areas, versus kind of like a wild where it has a pre-generated text of if there's food around or if there's other people but they're not part of a town yet, and so on, that gets filled in here. So that's quite neat, compared to the old kind of randomized, you just get dumped in the world and hope for the best. Here you have a little bit more control where you can start as a citizen of a town. But I think we're just gonna spawn out here in the wild just to make sure that we're not getting involved in any way. So the new dirt road textures, just I haven't touched the road speeds yet. I likely be looking at that somehow, somewhere. Wow. Doesn't like me having Unity open at the same time. Unity likes to eat memory by a significant amount. I would hop into record, but we need a UI for a few things here. So we're seeing a little bit of some interesting If you use a town spawn, can you put your property stake inside this town influence area? If you spawn as a citizen of the town, yes, you should be able to. There's nothing that kind of limits you to that regard outside of if the town itself has some laws and regulations to who can place property. We're seeing some neat structures, some good use of water, and you can probably tell. Yeah, we can tell here. So compared to what we were seeing earlier with the fixed rivers, here you can see that the water has been generated kind of spottedly on the side. And if I grab a dev tool, you can also see when I'm looking at water, you have a valid actual water tile that is something where rivers can flow from, versus the sub water blocks, which is the encased ones that are not working in the same way kind of data wise, and they should be water blocks but they're not turning into water blocks and so on. So you got a bit of a kelp lingering out of the ocean. You've got some flying fish here, so that should all be fixed. And according to Gabriel, it's most likely possible that it is also retroactively, so we might see this being fixed, at least to some extent, on the playtest branch in the build. And here you also have some of the delicious copper kind of poking out a little bit in the biomes that are related to. A skilled sniper, yeah. So if you are a member of a town, you can't place property outside of the town, because any property that you place down is under jurisdiction of that settlement. It's part of the drive for having people rent property versus owning it. So you might want to be renting property in another town. General water manipulation and interactability has been improved, but it's still not 100% where we want it. It's behaving a lot better in terms of water removal, and or when you're kind of placing stuff down, like here where you got ramps into the water where they're actually visibly not, like they're in water, they're visibly not having kind of air pockets and gaps around. As you can see from the dock blocks here as well. So if you remove these blocks, there'll still be water blocks in them. There's a canal on the server on one of the long thin islands. Oh yeah, over there. I see it. I'll do some teleportation. Let that load in. While that is loading in, we can take a look at the some of the maps here in the world layers. Annexation was a topic that has recently erupted in explosions, almost seemingly. We have any countries that are valid or has yeah. There we go. So we had a case up here where one of the towns annexed another town here, and the town that got annexed didn't exactly merge with the other town, because you have some basic rules and regulations towards influence properties. So each settlement tier can only have a certain amount of cultural properties, and cultural properties is where the general town influence is spreading from. So if a server has a restriction of 3 cultural properties in that town, it'll pick the 3 properties that has the highest cultural value, So if you're annexing a settlement as a town, in this case another town, you don't gain those 3 influential properties because they'll be below the threshold for being the new ones, which would shift your old influence, which would also be bad. But it means that you got one property here in the middle, you got one over here that is the foundation, and then you got one over here that is kind of the next extension. So instead of gaining this as a cultural property as well as whatever else they could have had, it lost its influence because the cultural property isn't valid anymore, which then meant that it broke the influence radius, which then meant that the claims on that property were no longer part of the settlement because they were outside the range of the influence, which kind of imploded on itself. So one of the restrictions that we're looking at adding is just removing the ability to claim or annex same tier settlements. So towns can't annex towns because one of the main driving reasons for the annexation mechanic in itself is that it should always be used as a last resort, and it should only ever be like generally it needs to be available at certain tiers or in certain interactions, because you don't want to have, say, a town or a state / country that is going full rogue and just wants to destroy the world and are this massive behemoth industry that doesn't care about pollution. So the general population on the server needs to have some way to interact with that or subjugate it to a point where they can enforce laws and regulations to curb this behavior. The downside with that, yeah, Waylon did it for science. The downside of that is that it can become very predatory, and it can also promote, like in lack of ecos combat, it promotes an aggressive kind of civilization behavior of destroy the other town so they can't beat us. So you push out your influence and you destroy the other town to prevent them from growing into influential, or you know, whichever possible scenario comes in here. So some of the ideas that we've been poking around with is introducing some type of upkeep cost, as well as rebalancing, significantly rebalance the values for cultural upgrades. So the idea being that you need to have a country to be able to annex towns, but you need to really, it takes a longer time to reach a country, and it also takes a lot more investment to reach a country. To make it to a point where it's preferable to just join the country and help, you know, join together and build that country rather than just a town killing another town to force the country on it. So there's a lot of discussion about what type of things we want to be introducing and what we're looking at in terms of like upkeep cost, where things like a town costs a certain amount to add to a country, but annexation has a much higher multiplier for that cost, and so on, or having some sort of like cultural upkeep required, so each town reduces the amount of, that gives you a negative penalty for culture. So you want to be looking to add more cultural towns. You don't want to just force annex all of these smaller towns just because you can. And that's a lot of things based on feedback that's coming on playtest, both either due to just players reporting it or things that we notice while looking at it, which is one of the reasons why this playtest has turned out absolutely fantastic. Things are being tested, things are being broken, and things are being fixed in a more secure state. So we are seeing significant improvements compared to, you know, playtest for 4 months ago, where everything kind of caused explosions. versus now it's only kind of real obscure oddities that are causing explosions. So we're working to a very nice, stable build wise. We're having less support needed with each week that passes in terms of just critical or high priority bug fixes. So it's been going quite nicely. Everyone in the team is absolutely super ecstatic for all the interest and all the super active participation in these playtests, as well as kind of riding the storm and making the journey a lot smoother for everyone else once we get to a releasable state. Did I have... I think I have. I'm not sure if we showed this. I think the concept art popped up in... So on... I think that's like before I kind of transition off and trail off. There any other general questions in regards to the playtest? I think the easel got pushed in. I'm hoping someone has kind of tinkered around with it a little bit at least. I love the bathrooms being like half of it. Oh boy. I see a culture padoga. Is that what we're having now? Look at this beautiful picture. Really showing off the amazing artistry here. Whoa, it is loading quite significantly. Can I? There we go. Can we play nice? Doesn't like me teleporting into a whole array of... There we go. I see some people are poking around with those pictures where the most expensive things in there. Yeah, so for don't know if it's a playtest question, but are there any plans to add something better than a tractor for farmers because of how slow it is? And if there's any plans on getting something that can break blocks, so when you tear down buildings you don't need to do one at a time. I would say there is some discussion regarding it. It's a bit of a problematic scenario in terms of the general transportability as well as the utility. There was some suggestions, and I've also tinkered with it on my local side, with having like the excavator being able to break like actual blocks, and you know, you would wreck the blocks with the excavator. And the issue with it is that you then have to allow all blocks to exist and stack properly inside the excavator, which then turns the excavator into a really good kind of transportation method, which is something that we don't really want. We want people to be using, you know, cars for transporting. We don't want the excavator to be the best transport method to haul building materials. Kind of where, and as a response on that whole tractor thing, it's one of the reasons why the tractor was slowed down from initially, because it was, well, one, it was way too fast in general, but it was slowed down further because it was generally used as quote unquote the best method of transporting crops, because it had that huge stack increase to be able to harvest the bigger fields more as a quality of life improvement rather than having to kind of empty it all the time. And that's a big concern for us in terms of the skid steer as well as the excavator, because to make them be usable in the scope that you'd want them to be usable when you're tearing down buildings, you run the risk of needing a big enough inventory to make sense, which then causes it to be a really good general transportation method of these blocks. Instead of using a truck, you just use the excavator because it's faster. And we don't necessarily want to just hamper the drive speed on them just for the sake of tuning down the usability as a logistical transport method. At the same time, we don't just want to, massively increase the transport capacity of the trucks just to compensate for the increased capacity of the excavator. So it kind of goes into that rumble issue of when you start poking in one end, you got like 20 other things that are heavily affected by it. So it's things that we're constantly looking at, and there's no really kind of easy solution that isn't potentially significantly impacting in other areas. Could have the excavator and the other utility vehicles poop out the materials on the ground, or have a cargo attachment and so on. Yeah, and that's things that we are looking at. So it's things that are being discussed and kind of reviewed as time is available. Could make something like the crane, but as a wrecking ball, so it's self-contained and doesn't move. Yeah, that's definitely also a possibility to kind of look over. And as I said, all of these ideas are kind of floating around, but there's no clear-cut planned solution for them. So that's probably a bit out, but we do have some things that might be coming for 10.1 that in some of that regard. But that'll be something that I'll go in on depth more later. What date is the goal to go live with the update 10? We don't have a set date yet. But we'll update on that as soon as we do have a date we can announce. Partially it's hingent on getting some of these bugs out of the way, and just general cleanup and making sure that the playthrough goes smoothly from start to finish, and everything seems fairly stable, and then we'll see from there. Oh god, Banana Republic. Yeah, that's a structure over there. Is that windmills? Is that what I'm seeing? Just calling it right now. I was hoping to avoid like advanced mechanical power versus basic mechanical power. But I mean, you are kind of forcing my hand here. Someone that didn't understand steam generation. Yeah, I mean, truth to be told, I'm not surprised. However, it's a really good performance kind of general degradation thing, so it's not a bad thing for performance testing. But like I said, I'm not surprised that this became a thing, as I suspected it would be. When I first introduced it, so I don't know. Yeah, it's 1,000 something. But I mean, effort was made here. Or is this a case of effort was not made here? Yeah. Is Ashlar going to be able to be aqueducts too? You know what? It's not. It's not a not a bad idea. Spoke on no more annexations in between towns, so you avoid the cultural wars in between kind of the same settlement tier. But is there an option to friendly merge two towns? Generally speaking, no, because of that inherent distance. Because you're not going to be able to stretch the influence that far in the capacity that you would need to kind of encompass one and the other. So the general notion is kind of to combine two towns, you would create a nation, and then you would start using the nation as the general push as well. So towns inherently have an issue with going that step over. But it's looking pretty neat. I'm hoping things stay somewhat stable and Cat doesn't blow things up completely. How to grab and eat sand on I mean, I guess it's more likely that Pepsi or Elmai destroys it, but you know, Cat's probably there in a corner and wrecks something on the spare time. But no, it's all the GMs have been doing absolutely fantastic. They've been putting up with some I fix it after they break it. No, it's they've been putting up with a lot of player antics, and they've been absolutely fantastic, helping out and making sure that things are staying as sane as they can be, in regards to kind of getting to know these new mechanics, getting to know the limitations of them, and everything surrounding it. So it's been really nice overall. I'm quite happy with how things are coming along. On the subject matter, since I'm seeing a lot of flax here, hope everyone is enjoying the new kind of brick / lumber recipe. I was tempted to drop in like plant matter / straw in the brick recipe as well, to kind of make that growth based as well, outside of the lumber, to kind of have like straw being a byproduct from corn and wheat and whatnot. It's a bit of a preparation thing, so let me know your thoughts on that in one of the discussion chats on Discord. So there's a couple of tuning for those recipes that we can be looking at. Kelp bricks, flax bricks, give. Speaking of crops, is there any discussion plans regarding more claim plots for farmers? Generally speaking, worldwide, you have, like, if you join a town and then you join a country, and then you join up with a federation, you generate the same amount of claims as you would if you read most of the skill scrolls in 9 or pre-10 versions. But there is nothing to kind of prevent you from being able to legislate in terms of towns, to kind of legislate districts to do that same thing, which I don't think I've seen a lot of experimentations of yet. I don't think we see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there's not a whole heap load of general districts. New weakness, Sunflower Haven. No, don't look. But there's a lot more utility with the granularity of settlement tiers. That gives you more leeway to be able to do like districts for self-regulated farms inside the town and so on and so forth. That way you can make farms without using claim papers at all, as long as you're farming inside the influence radius of your town. Versus, you know, actual private property. There's also the whole issue of, like, governments should be looking out for their farmers, because that's how they guarantee that their local area has food. So a lot of the general kind of property disputes and property issues that you run into is kind of shifted around who has the responsibility, because previously, pre-10, you were directly reliant on technological progression to get papers, which meant if you didn't read skill scrolls, you would never get any new papers to use as properties. While with settlements, all you need to do is talk to your local mayor, or talk to your local chieftain or mayor or president or whichever tier settlement you're in, to be able to buy papers or subsidize papers if you have a certain need for them over other players, or how they choose to dispense the papers inside that settlement. So claim papers, outside of you needing tech progression to be able to unlock a new tier of settlement to kind of bump it, you don't have that. You need to unlock all the skills individually, which means a lot less progression is needed to acquire the same amount of skill papers as before. So the problem kind of shifts around and are, you know, a different responsibility now versus before, which means it can also be solved in a lot of new ways. Then you were kind of stuck with always having to learn all the skill scrolls somehow, to be able to get that land that you can now get elsewhere. I feel that being a farmer is a strong incentive to also becoming a mayor, so you have ways to prevent crop thefts. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the same thing can be said about, you know, mining, smelting, being able to kind of dictate your own mining district and whatnot, or as logging, you know, being able to prevent people from cutting down trees in certain areas or the entire town, and so on and so forth. So it opens up a lot of depth to gameplay regulation, I guess I should say. So there's, you know, it's also boiling down to a lot of player responsibility of, you have the option to do it, but someone actually needs to take up the responsibility to do it. Which is where, you know, you can run short, or, you know, I'll just not bother with it and just, you know, kind of do my thing and not worry. So, you know, we're mainly aiming at giving tools to the people, and then if people decide to use the tools, they can improve their own regional sustainability or situation significantly by dabbling with them. Can we expect Gabriel's changes next week? I'm not gonna promise too much, but potentially. It really depends on the stability of the playtest branch that is being QA tested, and if there's anything that is causing issues or is potentially blocking migration to be pushed to the live playtest. I would stay on, just keep up on Discord and keep an eye out on the news and the playtest channels. But I believe he's looking at doing some improvements to the tick performance. So there might be some slight minor touch up and clean up in that PR, but potentially. But I'm not gonna stretch further than potentially. Ask a question for if these. I've got a few questions. The bridge here is all vanilla blocks. It is new dock block sets inside, or forms inside the hewn block material. So you are looking at, we do this and we grab hewn. You have a few new forms for fences and some fence posts, as well as supports, which is the blocks that you're seeing here below. Some of the support pillars, as well as the new platforms with support, platforms without, as well as a barrel. I think if it can, is it not wanting to show that off because of DevTool not playing nice. Apparently the DevTool doesn't like me today. But yeah, no, same thing for the ramps here as well. So you got a few new ramps, some corners to them, some inverted corners. So some of the things that are new for the from the art guys. Fly into the water. Why do you want me to fly into the water? Cat? Oh yeah, well. Why is... There we go. Yeah, so it's just the dev tool that is... The dev tool is not adhering to range limitations. But yeah, here we have the little bugger. Yeah, the dev tool's being a bit finicky. Regular hammers shouldn't be the case. The dev tool should be the only thing that should be targeting water. See, I can't build here. I'm inside towns. It's not allowing me to build stuff inside the Banana Republic, Cape Breton. So that's another, complication that players will have to deal with in terms of knowing the settlements they're under, the influence, the laws. But here we go. So here you can see the other form of block building. And I think as an outro, we can sneak in something that I believe it's popped in the dev hangout at one point, maybe. Let me just fetch. I know I had it here somewhere. Chat with Toby, maybe. Yeah. Or no. So some of the early concept arts for one of the new building blocks that is being tinkered with. See if I can do that. And can we move that to its own window? And then we can... No, we don't want a menu bar. We want to not show there. There we go. Doo-doo. So these are some of the things that we're looking at post 10. So this is kind of a sneak glimpse into the future of what we're looking for future content. And as the Twitch chat at least reacted to, this would be Adobe building blocks. So we're still kind of roughly checking out kind of what limitations and which block forms we actually want, and I'll probably get chewed out by Robert that isn't completely done with deciding this. We're showing off some of it, but you know, it is what it is. It's here now. But yeah, so this is concept made by Robert, one of our amazing artists that is also one of the main responsible one for doing almost all of the 2D icons across the board and a lot of the interfaces. So the general thought for this block, and this is where I need some thoughts and opinions from the playtesting as well as the general population here that pokes around with this. So the idea of these blocks is that this will be your introductory first blocks. So this will be predetermined from like pre-hewn logs, if you will. So this will be a it's made with raw logs and clay as well as potentially plant matter. So the question in terms of methodology for tiers is either introducing this as Lord Sachs pointed out in the chat, either it pumps out as a tier 0.5 or if we just want to push the incrementals, which is gonna, you know, be interesting to relearn for some of our older players. So if we introduce this as a tier 1 block, then would, you know, incrementally shuffle the rest of them. So hewn would be tier 2, lumber would be tier 3, corrugated would be tier 4, and ashlar be tier 5. And the general notion of this block is that it will be really cheap to manufacture and kind of use. It's intended to be your really day 1, day 2 kind of setup really quickly to get preliminary research going, getting up that initial crafting table to be able to start making hewn logs and mortared logs. And it wouldn't be tied to a profession, which also means that hewn logs and masonry stone would be tied to their profession. So those will be bumped out of the workbench. So you have this as kind of like a universal neutral block that is only really built and is your kind of native starter point, and then you transition into actual manufactured professional blocks that would be tier, you know, hewn logs and onward. To partially to make that early introduction to, you know, get some furniture up, get some house points, and so on. The workbench is still going to be, you know, tier less because you need to start working somewhere. The recipes for hewn and masonry stones out of them are going to disappear. Bumping them out of the workbench will make it tricky to make other recipes that require the two, like government expansions and other crafting tables. Sorta, but like all of the crude rudimentary work tables don't use profession rocks or profession blocks. There's also going to be a bit of rewiring of those really early recipes as well, in terms of either quantity or material use to compensate for this. But it will also make like logging and mining and into masonry being significant choices immediately out, for in terms of progression. So you can't make as it'll change, the early tier research in on its head. Like you can't make mortared research paper without the skill for it. You can't make hewn log papers or advanced dendrology papers without logging. And there's some thoughts into making sure that is also pushed for, because we have this weird gap early on where there's a lot of interdependencies, but then we have all of these kind of building options that are completely lawless if you don't have the skills for them. And for new players that's coming in, it's also really confusing as to why they shouldn't be using the crafting recipe on a workbench to make the hewn logs. Why should they spend the time making a carpentry table that requires a room, as well as picking a skill and spending a point on it, when they can pick mining and still be making hewn logs? So there's a lot of kind of early game new player cleanup and more kind of giving players a more directed feel for if they want to be doing XYZ, then they should be targeting XYZ for those reasons. And it'll also kind of work into the upgrade module changes and everything else to kind of make it look and feel as a more kind of steadily progression, regardless of the choices you're making early on. So yeah, because we had an idea of introducing it as like a separate tier 1 material, so you'd have hewn, mortared, and then adobe as like a gather crafting block. But I'm more in favor in opting it to be like this initial starter clean block to make hewn logs and mason stone be a lot more fitting in terms of how it's progressively getting involved in the economy and the general tech tree. So we'll see what happens with it, but just some thoughts and some rants and ideas that we're looking at for post 10 kind of future implementations and things that are being revised and evaluated right now, because Robert is poking at this right now on our develop branch. So it'll probably pop out some images in a couple of weeks, if not in a code stream or something where you might snap up on, hey, these are being added and so on. On skill, yeah. So that's generally the notion. So you have this kind of basic material that you quickly replace, but you need this house to kind of get going. And it also has a bit of gratifying of, you're getting stuff up, you're getting a house going, you're getting some furniture in, and that should be doable within the first couple of hours to see progression, even if it's not necessarily huge leap in progression. You still see, you come in, spend a few hours, and you can feel good about that. You built all this stuff and you've gotten somewhere, and you have that visual gratification of things happening in around. And it'll also make it more distinctual as well as the rest of the server kind of technologically progresses to deal with some of these things. Shop lowered to 0.5 would be a huge help, especially for early food trade. Yeah, and that's also part of this push for these blocks. So the adobe would be something that you build quickly. You could fit in your research table, your store, and things like that, and you kind of get going with the general notion of like being able to build a functional store within an hour of gameplay. I think is the kind of predetermined idea. That way you can quickly get going and start bartering and trading and kind of interacting with people around you, and kind of kick things off and keep you interested and kind of get activities in the surrounding areas. Makeshift shop that can be used outside but limited tier items and or quantity of options. Yeah, that it's been another topic that we've been kind of talking around, with more types of shops but with innate limitations of, say, a certain amount of quantity of sellable goods. So, you know, maybe limited to 5 slots, 10 slots or something. Yeah, you know, hoping everyone enjoyed the stream, and if you have any follow-up questions, and or I saw a few questions about the new brick/lumber recipes. Any kind of general changes, I'd suggest just hopping on Discord and doing a quick search, or asking in the playtest chat there, or either in the SO chat or the White Tiger channel, and you'll probably get a tech tree. I probably posted one or twice with the changes and what's being impacted. Sack. Flour in the campfire recipes. Yes, I know it's missing for the fish stew. That'll be fixed. But just, you know, hit me up with a DM if there's anything else. And yeah, hope everyone enjoyed. And I got some cat helpers that decided that, hey, you're done with the stream now, come on. Very impatient. But yeah, no. Happy to have hosted another Friday and another stream, another day, and I will catch you whenever I pop in next. And let me know in chat or something if people want kind of like a summarized video compilation, what have you, with like general 10.0 features. We'll keep dropping out the dev blogs with more detailed posts for each of the segments. But if there's any specific kind of, I want to know all the things that are related to this particular feature in a more extended stream, or you know, just in general, there's a few that's out on YouTube recorded. Some stuff has been updated mechanically since then. Just, you know, drop a message, drop a post, and I will catch you on the next stream. Take care and have a good weekend.